All right, so thanks again for doing this. First off, tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the community. What was your journey like?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me and reaching out to me. My name is Kylie, and I am an occupational therapist by background. I knew I wanted to be an occupational therapist since I was 16 years old. My mom was a special needs teacher, and growing up, I had a lot of different exposure to different types of roles that were in line with working with that type of population. And I just found my niche in occupational therapy. So, started as an OT after graduating from occupational therapy school in 2018 and actually moved to California. While here in California, I actually started a startup called Access Ability, which was kind of my first dive into advocating for the disability community. It was a red light, green light, yellow light rating system app for individuals to be able to say how accessible something is. So, how accessible an airline is, how accessible a concert venue is. So, all feedback based with a specific type of scale. And so, while I was working as an OT out here in California, I went ahead and was pitching that to VC funds and other entrepreneurs to see if I could get it off the ground. So that was kind of my first take in the rehab tech space as well. So I always saw big gaps in the marketplace for many different communities. I think that's been changing over the years, but back in 2018, when this was all happening for me personally, there was a big gap in the marketplace for something like accessibility. So, working on that project, I ended up having to table it and focus on my career as an OT. So, dove into that for about 4.5 years before making my way into the med tech, med device world, landing a job at a company called Harmonic Bionics based in Austin, Texas. And there I started off as the clinical education and training specialist for the company and the only clinician working for the company. And I am now the clinical manager at Harmonic Bionics. So I oversee all of the internal and external education on the device, a little bit about what the device does. It's an upper extremity exoskeleton-like rehabilitative system that's worn along all the joints of the upper extremity, and it's able to assist people in the phase of rehabilitation, primarily neurologic based. So we work a lot with stroke, spinal cord injury, and the goal there is just to get people back to the highest level of independence as possible with the least amount of chronic pain and disability in their upper extremities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's what I was gonna ask. Like, tell me a little bit about the thing that you do in your current role, at Harmonic Bionics, because it's a pretty cool company.
Yeah, it's a really cool company. Hopefully, in the show notes, you can maybe tag our website so people can click in and see a video of it. But it is a really cool piece of technology that came out of the University of Texas in Austin. The founders are roboticists by background. So, actually, one of our co-founders is the head of a Renew Robotics Lab at University of Texas. The other co-founder was a PhD colleague of his, and they basically were given this problem of how to provide better comprehensive rehab for the upper extremity, looked at what else is out on the marketplace, and then went ahead and designed Harmony SHR, which is that upper extremity robotic system that I mentioned, which is really cool.
Yeah. So what sorts of methods or approaches do you use when working with clients?
Yeah, that's really great. So, being an occupational therapist by background, I have direct clinical experience working with people of all different backgrounds, right? Disabilities, cultural differences, things like that, than to maybe my own. And I think the biggest thing to consider when working with people is really just finding out what their goals are and adjusting my approach and style to what is going to be met best to meet their needs. So, I apply that approach in all aspects of my career. So whether it's working as a clinical manager for this company or working with patients one-on-one directly or working with people in the community, it doesn't really matter what I think is what the goal should be for somebody or what society thinks the goal should be for somebody, right? It's really what's important to that person. And so it's looking at it from a holistic lens, right? I think a lot of times people are shoved in societal boxes of what should be normal or what is acceptable, right? And I think from a rehab perspective, we have been a part of that, unfortunately, for a little while, with just being more medical model, right? So specifically looking at people with autism and like school-based settings, right? We're given standards and we're made to try to squeeze these individuals into these boxes to make them what society would deem as normal, right? But in reality, what that person does and as you know, and who they are as a person, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Everyone's different. And so I think that's kind of my ethos and my approach to working with all different types of people is finding out what is at the core of what's important to you, whether I'm working with you as a rehabilitation patient, whether I'm working with you as a customer and I'm selling you a device like Harmony, or I'm working in the community and I'm building something like accessibility where I'm trying to find out what the biggest barriers are for you to be able to go to that concert or go to that restaurant to take somebody on a date or things like that, and try to make the environment fit you, not you fit the environment, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. So, my next question is, what impact does your work have on the greater community? What have people said, when they come and see you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think working in medical device and medical technology is a passion of mine. I would love to see what the shift is going to look like. I wish I could like close my eyes and picture what the 5-year mark is going to look like, but every year things are just evolving so rapidly as far as what types of technologies are offered, digital health products, things like that. And then looking at how that can actually impact certain communities, right? Or certain demographics as well. So being an occupational therapist, by background, like my foundation, my brain is always thinking of what's next, what's the next problem to solve. With our piece of technology directly, our goal, like I mentioned, is to reduce chronic pain and encourage independence with technology, or encourage independence without technology. So being able to do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do pre-use with Harmony SHR. Our typical patients are going to be, like I mentioned, spinal cord injury, stroke, MS. We work with ALS patients, Guillain-Barré, so really heavily focused in the neurological community. But as far as like applying the scope to like the disability community, where we're looking to go with these types of technology and what the type of impact that technology has had, is things like wheelchair training. Things like, so somebody that might not be able to normally do a movement pattern with their arms, being able to get them in the robotic device and be able to learn how to use the controls in the wheelchair with the support of the exoskeleton, or manually roll their wheelchair, things like that, to help progress them forward with building strength and range of motion. So those are the big things that we hear as far as feedback from our customer base, is just that utilizing the technology helps them get to the point where they do not no longer need it and are able to be a little bit more independent.
Mm-hmm. My last question to kind of wrap this up is, what can people take away from this conversation? How can this sort of technology sort of help people create that independence and autonomy that they deserve and need, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, it's it takes practice. Any type of device, advanced technology device that comes onto the market, the biggest thing is going to be like repetition and practice with the device. Our device right now is for clinical use only. Where I see the biggest impact with our specific type of upper extremity technology is being made into a wearable. So something that can actually come home with someone and actually provide them with continued support as much as they need it at home. Because what we know, especially with depending on your disability or depending on what you may have gone through, accident, injury, illness, you don't always make it back to full, to full 100%, or you might just need a little extra help, right? You might just have trouble training your upper extremities to get to the point where they are strong enough to self-propel your wheelchair, to make yourself a meal. With a at-home wearable is where I really see Harmony SHR having the biggest impact with the disability community. I think right now our clinical model is fantastic for getting people back to a point of independence or at least back to their baseline. So, like the biggest thing that I can think of is we've worked with some patients with brain injury. Obviously, I mentioned spinal cord injury, things like that. And they were been able to strengthen and move muscles that they haven't been able to move before because typically when they would attend physical therapy or occupational therapy, there's a lot of manual hand over hand movement that happens. So there's not a lot of autonomy for the person receiving that therapy. And what the robotic system allows them to do is feel that autonomy. So that independence of moving their arms with the robotic device versus a therapist manually facilitating. And that in turn helps up build not only motivation, confidence, but strength as well, right? Because we can grade using the robotic system how much help to give or how much support to reduce so that it is more challenging for the person. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a long roundabout answer, but there's a lot of opportunity here. We're just at the very we're at the jumping off point. Our device has just become commercialized last summer. And so we have a ways to go to really bring this technology to its most impactful, which, like I said, I think was at home. But we're able to make huge leaps and bounds in comprehensive upper extremity rehab in its current state in a clinical setting.
Yep.